I want to share with you what I think should be just screaming news, okay? Screaming headline news. The real reason, the very simple, the very underreported reason that there's a slow vaccine rollout in the US and there's a global vaccine shortage. And understanding this reason just exposes so much about the problem with our system. It really comes down to the simple fact that these vaccines were developed in conjunction with governments but are owned by a few large pharmaceutical manufacturing companies. And they do not want to share those patents with others that have the facilities and the abilities to manufacture those vaccines. Yet this isn't a thing. And whether you agree they should have sole possession of those patents and that technology to further their profit motive to bring us innovations, even though it's done in conjunction with governments and taxpayers, if you agree with those pharmaceuticals on that, but even so, shouldn't this be a national, a global discussion? So let me start with on the global level from Public Citizen. So their February 24th, 2021 press release. 400 U.S. organizations call on Biden administration to stop blocking COVID-19 World Trade Organization waiver to boost vaccine treatment worldwide. So here they go on to explain there was a Trump administration obstruction originally of an emergency COVID-19 waiver of the World Trade Organization's intellectual property rules. So it's that simple, okay, on the global level at least. In the national, it's a little different. I'll get back to there. So under World Trade Organization agreement, there's a trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights agreement, which is called TRIPS. And it requires countries to provide lengthy monopoly protection, I'm quoting from Public Citizen, for medicines, test technologies used to produce them. While there is production capacity in every region, World Trade Organization rules block the timely and unfettered access to the formulas and technology needed to boost manufacturing. So first of all, this supposed liberal media that was supposedly attacking Trump, yeah, they called him a buffoon and all this kind of stuff. They didn't, not literally, but figuratively. So his supporters are getting upset and angry, but they didn't explain things that administration was sticking up for big pharma at the World Trade Organization. So they did not explain this blockage of a COVID-19 waiver. And again, they're barely talking about it under Biden. So Biden's being pushed now by groups like Public Citizen who have more influence with Biden than they did with Trump. So I don't want this video to be used as some cynical ploy for what I call the reckless elements of the business community to resurrect Trump or someone like him. Now, from a news media outlet you could call a leftist source, but it's good journalism, and you might not agree with everything left or everything liberal, but what's good about this news media outlet, Democracy Now!, is that they really go after these like kind of corporate malfeasance and that type of thing. So they have someone, Dr. Moga Kamalyani, interviewed there. And she really broke it down, how these vaccine patents are not being shared. So here's some of her examples she gave. Only AstraZeneca can produce the Oxford vaccine. Only Pfizer can produce the BioNTech vaccine. And only Moderna can produce the vaccine that was developed by the NIH or in conjunction with the NIH. There is a solution, she said. The World Health Organization set up a mechanism whereby one can share technology. It's called COVID Technology Access Pool, or CTAP. And in her words, can facilitate the technology transfer from the company to potential producers. And as she pointed out, there is more manufacturer capacity in the world totally unused. One of the many examples she gave, por ejemplo, was Cuba. Cuba is in phase 3 trial in one of its vaccines, and Cuba has 30 years experience of manufacturing vaccines. So here, all these countries that could manufacture are not being allowed to because they don't yet have their own patent. It's not being shared. During a pandemic, meanwhile, the variant can change, so it's going to learn how to beat the vaccine. Now, another source I get this from, how I'm seeing this differently than the mainstream news media is seeing it, is I also, in addition to listening to this, like what you could call a consumer activist and leftist, sources, also the business shows. I like listening to the business shows. So one of them is called The Exchange. The Exchange had on Mayor Bill de Blasio on their January 29th, 2020 show. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, and I'm quoting him now, every company involved in current vaccine production, that's not what he sounds like, I'm just doing that, should stand down on enforcing its patents in order to mass produce vaccines. We got pharmaceutical capacities, we got pharmaceutical companies here in the United States that could be producing vaccine right now. Now listen to this, he goes on to say, they've identified 27 pharmaceutical companies and biotech companies who could be contributing to vaccine production. This is Bill de Blasio, mayor of New York City, to help us get ahead of these variants. Then the host says, and have you heard, is anybody doing that? And Bill de Blasio says, no. So we can ask ourselves, why is this happening? And I think Bernie Sanders explained it pretty well on the campaign trail. He said that the climate crisis is due to the power and influence of the fossil fuel industry. The opioid crisis is due to the power and influence of pharmaceutical industry. The high price of prescription medication is due to the power and influence of the pharmaceutical industry. And now the fact that we don't have ample vaccine supply is due to that same influence. Now, Bernie didn't point out enough was that these same organizations have influence in the media. So the media really doesn't want to look at it and show it that way unless it's maybe like a leftist news media outlet. But in general, they don't. Or you're listening to business news media outlets who aren't going to say it's something bad about it. They're just going to point out this is what's happening so you kind of know where to place your bets. So what's the solution? Well, the solution, I think you got to listen to kind of how Bernie Sanders is putting it. You need to think in terms of like how these aggregations of money and power are influencing our politics and our media, and just be aware of that. And whenever you're hit with a news item, run it through that kind of a filter. That's one thing. Another thing is, I support, whether you support democratic socialism or not, it's important that Bernie brought that up, because really capitalism is going to function better if it's not going to drive us into the ground with having some level of competition, so it's kind of incentivized to behave itself better. An example I like to give is, think back when there was a USSR. In those days, capitalism had to justify its existence and try to provide the public with benefits. Like there was a large rush to go to space to prove capitalism can take humanity to the stars. There was all kinds of social safety net programs put in place and that type of thing. So that's my solution. You want to look to support politicians who are maybe offering alternatives or kind of challenging the system, and then keep it in your own head how the system works. Well, I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please subscribe to my channel. The reasons as to why we have vaccine shortages and globally and within the United States, and it's very simple. It's under our noses yet not being reported. And if you did find it helpful, please subscribe and click that notification bell so you know when I'm putting up a new video. Comment, support a Patreon to help make this effort more sustainable, and until next time, peace be with you.